She was 19 when her father closed the deal. 19 when her future was measured not in dreams or promises, but in the weight of a horse's reins pressed into a stranger's hand. 19 when the sound of hooves outside their collapsing farmhouse felt louder than her own heartbeat. Because she already knew, even before he said it out loud, that she was the price. The drought had taken everything first. The wheat shriveled into dust. The cattle sold one by one. The neighbors gone without. Goodbye until all that remained was a broken man with a proud spine bent too far and a daughter who still believed love meant protection. Her name was Clara May, and she stood barefoot on warped wooden boards as her father, Henry May, shook hands with a rancher she'd never met, a man whose face was weathered like the land itself, quiet eyes shaded by the brim of a worn hat, his posture calm in a way that didn't belong to desperation. The horse stood between them like an offering to the old gods of survival, strong, chestnut-colored, muscles gleaming with health, the kind of animal that could pull a farm back from ruin. Clara felt her throat tighten as the words finally landed. Heavy and irreversible, she'll go with you. That was the agreement. Her father didn't look at her when he said it. He couldn't. If he did, he might have broken. And breaking was a luxury hunger didn't allow. The rancher, Elias Crow, said nothing at first. His silence was not cruel, but it was firm. And in it, Clara felt the terrifying weight of being claimed without being asked. She wanted to scream, to remind her father of bedtime, stories and scraped knees and the promise he once made, that no man would ever take her without her consent. But desperation has a way of erasing memory. Elias finally spoke, his voice low and steady. She won't be mistreated. That was it. No vows, no lies sweetened with hope, just a sentence that sounded more like a rule he had already decided to live by. Clara packed nothing, because nothing felt like it belonged to her anymore. When she climbed onto the wagon beside Elias, her father pressed a kiss to her forehead, his lips trembling, and whispered, "I'm sorry," like that word could stitch a wound this deep. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The road away from home stretched endlessly, dust rising behind them like the ashes of the girl she used to be. Elias didn't touch her. He didn't look at her for a long time either. When he finally did, it wasn't with hunger or ownership, but with something heavier, responsibility, that scared her more. The ranch was far from everything she knew, wide open land rolling beneath a sky that felt too big, too indifferent. The house was sturdy but lonely, built for function, not warmth, and Clara braced herself for commands, for rules spoken sharp and fast, for a life where her voice would disappear completely. Instead, Elias showed her a room with clean sheets and a window that caught the sunrise and said, "This is yours," then left her alone. Days passed strangely. He rose before dawn, worked until the sun dipped low, and never once demanded she cook or clean or share his bed. She offered once, shaking, unsure if refusal would anger him, and he looked at her as if the thought offended him. "You don't owe me your body," he said. "You owe yourself time to breathe." No one had ever said that to her before. She didn't trust it. Kindness without cost felt like a trick. She waited for the catch. For the night, he'd come to collect what he bought, but it never came. Instead, he left food outside her door when she wouldn't come out. He spoke to her like she mattered, asked what she liked, what she missed, what scared her. When she finally cried, deep, body-shaking sobs that tasted like grief and betrayal, he didn't tell her to stop. He sat on the floor across the room, close enough that she wasn't alone, far enough that she didn't feel trapped. The horse, the one that had sealed her fate, became her companion. She brushed its mane, whispered her anger into its ears, and felt something soften inside her every time Elias watched from a distance. Never intruding, never claiming. Rumors traveled faster than truth, and whispers reached her from passing hands. Some called her a bought bride. Others pitied her. A few mocked Elias for paying so high for a woman who wouldn't warm his bed. She expected him to resent her for it. He never did. One evening, after a storm tore through the valley, and she found him bleeding from a gash on his arm, she reached for him without thinking, tearing cloth to bind his wound. Their eyes met then, truly met. And in that moment, Clara realized something terrifying and beautiful. She was safe, not owned, not used, safe. And safety, she learned, was the soil where love could someday grow. Though neither of them dared name it yet, Elias slept on the couch that night, despite her offering the bed. And when she asked why, his answer was simple: because your yes should come from freedom, not fear. If you're still listening to this story right now, take a moment, because stories like this don't survive without you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Because what Clara thought was the end of her life was only the beginning, and the choice her father made would ripple forward in ways none of them could imagine. By the time winter arrived, Clara was no longer counting days like a prisoner. She was learning the land, learning herself, learning the quiet strength of a man who asked for nothing and gave everything. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the scars of betrayal, a fragile hope began to form, one that would soon be tested by secrets, by the return of her past, and by a love that would demand courage from them both.